An old saying attributed to the French Emperor Napoleon, but often quoted even today, reads, "Let China sleep, for when she wakes, she will shake the world." But is there really reason to cite a more than 200-year-old saying?
There's a view out there that is inevitable, that as one power rises and seeks to secure its interests on its own terms, that it is going to lead to conflict with the established power. I don't see that that's necessarily inevitable.
Bates Gill is head of the International Peace Research Institute, CIPRI, in Stockholm. He also leads CIPRI's research program on China's role in global security.
There are differences, I think, between the case today of a rising China and that of past examples.
When Mao Zedong's successor, Deng Xiaoping, began reforming China's economy, it was industry, trade, and agriculture that were to be prioritized. China's defense, the People's Liberation Army, would have to wait. But 20 years ago, China began modernizing and developing its defense. And in recent years, the military budget has increased more than 10% each year. However, it is still less than a fifth of the U.S. defense budget.
Most Americans think the Chinese military is nearly equal in capability to the U.S. military, while in reality it's probably 30 to 40 years before the Chinese military can catch up to American military capabilities.
China remains primarily a regional power. Potential territorial disputes as in the South China Sea or with Japan. What China needs most from a defense and military security perspective is basically a few things. One is to assure that its territorial integrity. What that means is to be able to defend claims such as Taiwan. Secondly, China also, I think, recognizes the need to be able to defend its economic success, so be able to defend against potential threats against its major East Coast cities, and even provide some security to its shipping. I think we can argue that China has been historically a land power. China has never sought in its history to be a sea power in the same way that the United States or Japan have been.
The U.S. has decided to shift its military weight from Europe and the Middle East to the Pacific region. They have had naval bases there since World War II and close alliances with South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. The U.S. now wants to expand this cooperation to other countries in the region.
Clearly, the future of the world, the center of gravity of the world, has been in the Asia-Pacific and will only continue to be an even stronger aspect of geopolitics and geoeconomics going forward. The United States needs to be a part of that. And that includes, as an economic power, as an increased diplomatic presence. And yes, it will mean an increased military presence in the region as well. A part of that, yes, is in response to China's growing role.
China is very sensitive to what goes on in its territorial waters. Besides Tibet and Xinjiang, the island of Taiwan belongs to what China considers its sphere of interest.
We stay quite closely engaged with each other, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. First of all, there is the Taiwan issue that is really very important to the Chinese nation. We want to seek early reunification, and we want the United States to continue to adhere to one China policy. This is really the foundation on which ChinaUS relations grow.
2012 has seen saber rattling in the part of the Pacific known as the South China Sea. It is here that China, Vietnam, and the Philippines disagree about naval boundaries, and the rhetoric has often been hostile. But for China, an armed conflict is out of the question.
I think the possibility of China entering into arms conflict with other countries, and particularly other major powers, is zero. It's quite self-evident. First, this is an integrated world. We have a global economy that is very much integrated, and China and the United States, I would say, depend on each other in terms of business relations. And you may also remember that both China and the United States are nuclear powers. And that means armed conflict between two nuclear powers, that is something unthinkable.
If we end up in a Cold War with China 10 or 15 years from now, it represents an enormous policy failure in both governments. And I really think it's very important that both the policy level in Beijing and the policy level in Washington think more creatively about how to assure a higher percentage chance of a much better future.